मैं आपको एक नंबर बताने वाला हूँ, जस्ट वन नंबर। और ये नंबर इंडिया के पिछले 10 साल की सबसे बड़ी, सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट कहानियों में से एक है। अ नंबर दैट विल एब्सोल्युटली ब्लो योर माइंड।
So what's the number? It's 171 million. According to the World Bank, that's the number of Indians who escaped extreme poverty in just 10 years. Now, ये extreme poverty है क्या? Simply put, it's a global line set by the World Bank. और इसके नीचे जीने का मतलब है you're fighting for survival every single day. So this isn't just some small victory. It's a massive, historic achievement for India.
But the big question is, how did this miracle happen? इतने सारे लोग इतनी जल्दी गरीबी से बाहर कैसे आ गए? And also, is poverty really just about not having enough money in your pocket? Well, let's dive deep. In this explainer, we're going to get to the bottom of these very questions. All right, here's our game plan. First, we'll try to understand what poverty really means. Then, we'll see how it's actually measured. After that, we'll celebrate India's incredible win. And finally, we'll talk about the real challenges that lie ahead. Let's get started. So let's kick things off with Section 1. Is poverty just a label, a word we used, or is there a much deeper truth behind it? Well, social scientists believe that to really get it, we need to understand two very important concepts. The first one is called social exclusion. It's a heavy term, but the idea is simple. It means that poor people are often pushed to the sidelines of society. They're excluded from good schools, better healthcare, safer neighborhoods, basically from better opportunities. Think of it like this. Remember back in school when teams were being picked for a game and some kids were always picked last or maybe not at all? It's kind of like that. It's not just about a lack of money. It's about a lack of opportunity and respect. And the second big idea, and this one's really crucial, is vulnerability. Let me break it down for you. Imagine it's raining outside. Everyone gets a little wet, right? But the person who doesn't have an umbrella or a raincoat, they're the ones who are most likely to get sick. That's vulnerability. It just means that some groups don't have a strong shield to protect them when bad times hit, like a sudden illness, losing a job, or a flood. And so they face the highest risk of falling into poverty. So, in India, who are these groups with the weakest shield? Who are the most vulnerable? Well, the data is pretty clear on this. It points towards scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, agricultural laborers working in villages, and casual daily wage workers in our cities. For these groups, the threat of poverty is always just around the corner. All right, let's move on to Section 2. Now that we have a feel for what this problem is, how do we actually measure something so complex? This brings us to the story of the Garibi Rekha, or as we know it, the poverty line. So you can think of the poverty line as a kind of minimum pass mark for basic needs. If your income or your spending falls below this imaginary line, then you're officially considered to be poor. It's really just a tool that the government uses to identify the people who need help the most. And in India, this line is actually based on calories. Yeah, the minimum calorie intake you need. For rural areas, the benchmark is 2,400 calories a day. And for urban areas, it's 2,100. Now, you might ask why more for rural areas? Well, it's generally because there's more physical work involved. So the amount of money you need to buy these many calories, that becomes our poverty line. Of course, many experts argue that this method is a bit outdated because it doesn't really account for other essential costs like housing, healthcare, and education. Okay, now we get to the heart of this explainer, the part of the story that really surprised the whole world. Section 3, India's big win. Just look at this number, 2.3%. According to World Bank data, by 2022-23, India's extreme poverty rate had dropped to just 2.3%. Let me say that again, just 2.3%. This number isn't just a statistic, it's a massive ray of hope. This slide really shows the whole journey. I mean, just think about it. Back in 2011-12, this rate was at 16.2%, and in less than a decade, it plummeted all the way down to 2.3%. That is a fantastic and consistent decline. And you know what's really amazing? This victory wasn't just limited to the big cities. The real transformation, the real change happened in our villages, where poverty fell from a high of 18.4% down to just 2.8%. And in the cities, it went from 10.7% to 1.1%. This is solid proof that the benefits of growth reached everyone. So who were the heroes in this success story? Well, a huge credit goes to these 5 big states: Uttar Pradesh, Maharashtra, Bihar, West Bengal, and Madhya Pradesh. Back in 2011, 65% of India's poor lived in these very states. Together, they contributed to 2/3 of this entire reduction. And it makes sense, right? Because their populations are so large, even a small improvement lifts millions out of poverty. Plus, a lot of government schemes were heavily focused on these high-poverty regions. So we've seen the victory, which is fantastic. But it's also really important to understand who the enemy was. What exactly were we fighting against? Let's dive into Section 4, the real causes of poverty. The roots of this problem go way back into our history. First, there was colonial rule, which systematically dismantled our traditional industries. Then came a rapidly growing population, which put a huge strain on our resources. Add to that high rates of unemployment and a very unequal distribution of things like land, where a few people had a lot and most people had almost nothing. Then you have the agricultural issues, like small, fragmented farms and low productivity because of old farming methods. And layered on top of all of that are social factors like the caste system, inheritance laws that keep breaking up land into even smaller pieces, and of course the massive burden of debt on farmers. All of these things together weave a complex web that's incredibly difficult to escape from.
All right, now a question for you. Let's just pause and think for a second. Out of all these reasons we just talked about, which one do you think is the single biggest cause of poverty in India today? Is it historical, economic, or social? Let me know what you think down in the comments.
Okay, so we've understood the problem and its many causes. Now let's look at the solution. What was actually done about it? This brings us to Section 5, the Fight Back Plan. Fundamentally, India's strategy has been two-pronged. On one hand, the goal was to promote economic growth to create more opportunities for everyone. And on the other hand, it was to create targeted anti-poverty programs that directly reach the poor and give them that safety net we talked about earlier. And speaking of that safety net, one of its biggest schemes has a magic number: 100 days. For millions of families living in rural India, these 100 days became a powerful symbol of hope and security. We're talking about MGNRGA, the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. Launched way back in 2005, this massive scheme guarantees 100 days of paid work every year to each rural household. Alongside this, other schemes like the PDS, or the Public Distribution System, ensured food security by providing grains at subsidized prices. Together, these programs built a powerful safety net that prevented millions from falling deeper into poverty. So, here's the bottom line. The war against extreme poverty, the fight for basic survival, we have almost won it. But the battle is far from over. The real challenge now is the fight against human poverty, the battle for good education, better healthcare, and equal opportunities for every single citizen. So the final question is this: to win this new battle, what should India's next big step be? Definitely something to think about.